All right, guys, let's place a bet. Batman versus Spawn. Who do you think wins? You got Supernatural, but you got Batman, who's always prepared. I think if you give Batman 10 minutes, I bet you he could beat anybody. Well, you know what? We're gonna find out here. We're looking at Batman Spawn. This is the classic collection. Now, this is the basically the reprint of the story that came out 30 years ago, or two stories that came out 30 years ago. And it has, of course, Batman, my boy, and then you got Spawn, who is also an Avenger of Darkness. He has Hell powers, and this is a pretty interesting crossover. This is really cool. The cover is actually Greg Capullo and Seth MacFarlane, so that's really cool. You can definitely tell the influence of Greg Capullo in the back, and then Seth MacFarlane in the front. But yes, this is a really cool story. I love crossovers. Crossovers to me are dear and dear to my heart. One of my favorite crossovers is the Batman versus Aliens, which I think I'm going to pull it out just so I can show it to you, because I might do like a crossover video of all of the best Batman crossovers. But I also like these because you never get to see these characters interact ever. So seeing like the one-offs, I think, are really special to me, just because in a world of comic books where anything can happen, why not make these crossovers happen that are funny? Sometimes they're crazy, and this one is real dark. So let's go ahead and take a look. All right, so let's jump into Batman Spawn, the classic collection. Now, again, this has two stories that are, I would say, the main crossovers for them, and they're actually really good. If you know about Batman and Spawn, you don't really need to know a lot of it to jump into this and enjoy it. So that's really good. I'm glad that was made that way. It was kind of just like a one-off sort of thing, but you don't need to actually know the entire history of both characters to really appreciate it. So this one starts off in Krakatoa. No, Roanoke. Roanoke, and if you know the story of Roanoke, it's basically this settlement in the U.S. that happened to disappear, and nobody knows what's happening except that on a tree there was on a tree was written Krakatoan, like that. This kind of expands on that. It looks like it was part of like a giant pentagram, and then we turn to Gotham. It looks like, if you know who this is Match Malone. This is Batman's, basically his crime alter ego that he uses to get information on the crime world, and nobody knows that it's him. He basically has a mustache. He's all like real trashy. So that's pretty funny. Of course, he changes to Batman. And he's going, and then Spawn is in the city as well. So in this story, Spawn is actually already in the city, in Gotham, for example. So he feels evil. They are attracted to this building, and he goes, and it turns out that this guy named Simon Vesper was the architect of the building, and he was shot, and Spawn remembers killing him, like shooting him. And then you go back to Batman's side, and he was there basically looking for this guy as well, for Simon Vesper, and he was there when he got shot, but he couldn't catch the killer because the killer ran away. Of course, it was Spawn, or Al. His name is Al before he turned into Spawn. And so they're basically both trying to find the same guy. Turns out he came back from the dead. Ooh, because they did like a blood sacrifice with this other guy. You'll see him here. Yes, this guy. So he brought him back like that. So then they're both going to the tower, and while they're there, they see the Krakatoan again written in blood. And Batman and Spawn, that's where they fight. Spawn thinks that Batman is like a devil coming after him. So he starts fighting him, and as you can see there, it looks like, for the most part, Batman seems to have the upper hand in this. It feels like Spawn is very confused in this one, so I think he beats him up, and he's like, "Oh, what's going on?" And he's like, "Oh, you can. We're looking for the same, I guess, guy." They go after this guy, Vesper, and they're all there. They go after him, and he's like, "Oh, look, he's gonna, go, do the whole pentagram thing again." And he does. He turns off the power except for this area, and he's gonna light up this tower basically. And basically, he wants to bring Gotham into hell so that he has servants for himself, and it brings back the dead, as you can see there. And so they're like, "Oh, we gotta fight him," and he's like, "Why are you want to do this? What's your end goal here where they're fighting?" And then Spawn's like, oh, this is basically the portal of hell. And then Batman's trying to fight him, thinking he's a guy, but it turns out that he's not a guy. He's this, like, demon guy, or, like, yeah. Turns out it's this guy, the demon Crocatone. That's why the name was there, and he needed the sacrifice to basically reign in hell. So Spawn, of course, fights him, and Batman does as well. They fight him together, and using his powers, you know, Spawn basically turns into a human and he dies. And then the gateway to hell slams closed. The dead return back to their you know, cities, and they kind of just go off onto their own way. Like, so it's a very one-shot kind of story. There's not really a lot of connection to their past exploits. Just kind of, you know, if you know the characters a little bit, then you'll be fine reading this one. This is the other story. This one is the Batman Spawn. This one I think is the better story, just because, well, not only because, but it also additionally, Frank Miller is the writer, and then Todd McFarlane is the artist. So right there, you got two amazing individuals who are helping to make this a really good story, and they're investing in the characters, especially Todd McFarlane, who, you know, had a hand in creating Spawn, and his Frank Miller's Batman stories are amazing. So that's really cool. You get Batman here. He's, you know, beat up. He was fighting somebody, looking for this electronic stuff, and then these robots. He's getting attacked by robots. If you know about Spawn, some later on, like, the robots definitely have a lot more. There's definitely some robotic aspect to it later on, instead of just supernatural. So that's cool. This kind of plays into that as well. Robots are controlled by basically human heads. They're like, oh no, what's going on? You meet this lady who basically, she's helping out the homeless. This, of course, is foreshadowing the bad guy early on. If you haven't read the story, I apologize. And then you can definitely tell Frank Miller's style of Batman is here. He's very moody and dark, and like very, I can do everything, nothing. Yeah, I can do all of it. And Todd McFarlane's artistic styles, especially with like the Joker, or not the Joker, sorry, with Alfred, like very thin, like, you know, and then, you know, Batman's hulking. So it's pretty funny. And then of course, you know, classic Todd McFarlane. The cape is like 30 feet long with the smoke and everything. Of course, it looks great, but practical, it's not. You know, so he's there. He's looking for you know, homeless people, and then here's Spawn. Now Spawn is in New York. Oh yeah. So basically, Batman goes to New York to track down, I believe, some information on the heads of the person missing. The person from the, you know, the missing head was from New York, so he's like, I got to go find out what's going on. He goes to New York. New York is Spawn's territory, so he's there already. And he works with the homeless, so he knows that these people are his people, basically. You know, kind of gives you a little foreshadowing of Spawn, like, you know, they can shoot him and nothing happens to him. He looks so badass in the fire like that. Like, Todd McFarlane does a really great job on doing it, stuff like that. Like the coloring right there, so you can see it's a fire coming out there. That's cool. Then, of course, Batman comes in. And he, of course, attacks Spawn. He's like, "You're a murderer. You killed these." Well, he killed these guys that were trying to light up the homeless. He killed them. And you know, Batman's like, "Oh." Batman at first has the upper hand, but he even says, "You know, what is this guy made of?" It's like punching a brick wall. And then, of course, he's like, "Let me throw these things at him." So Spawn like blocks them. Of course, Spawn is supernatural, so he does have powers. Batman doesn't know this. So even Batman's like, you know, I'm going to throw this, you know, whatever he is, like he still breathes, so he throws this gas grenade, and it kind of like knocks him off balance for a little bit to Spawn. And then it's funny here because, okay, so then Spawn starts fighting back and says, "It feels like cheating," thinks Spawn. It is cheating. I'm overpowered. Batman realizes it's using the magic to make himself strong to beat the crap out of Batman, and then Batman says, "I'm overpowered." Batman realizes it's retreat or die, and if I'm dead, he tells himself, "I'm used to nobody." So he kind of like backs off into smoke, and even here, it says, Batman gets 10 blocks before his knees give out. He spends the next few minutes teaching himself how to breathe without coughing, then he goes to work on his right arm, fitting it back into its socket. Then he twists himself around until the bones of his spine are a little bit less tangled. This is all very painful, which is good. It keeps his mind off humiliation. So he knows Spawn is stronger, but in this Batman, he's more like, I'm too strong. I can't say anything, blah, blah, blah. So then Spawn is going around, and then he finds more of these robots. He takes the robot's gun and blows it off, and he finds the head of another homeless guy. So he tracks it down to this girl, this lady, and basically she is kidnapping homeless people and using their brains to control the robot weapons that she has. So then Spawn is like, I need to go. We need to go. I need to go find them. So Batman's in here bandaging himself up, and he's going after this girl, and she's like, "Oh, Batman, you're here for all my help. I need you to stop Spawn." So he falls for it. He's like, "I'm going to stop him. He's the real threat." So then Spawn is over here with the homeless people, like telling them, "Oh, you guys got to be careful." Batman shows up. They start fighting again, but now Batman has that weapon from the beginning, so he's using it to beat up Spawn. And they're going at it. So this one is really more of an all-out brawl, which is cool because you wanted to kind of see that. How would Batman get the upper hand? And he gets it with that, robotic implement or arm. And even Batman's here's like, "You're stupid, sloppy fighter, stupid fighter, no discipline." And, they keep on fighting, as you can see there. But at the end, they're both all like, "Ugh." They're both, "I can't keep going." They're like, "I'm going to catch my breath." Batman's like, "I'll rip you to pieces." And then while they're there, the robots attack both of them. And it's about to kill Batman over here. And then Spawn uses his power to basically... So he was going to die. Look, like when the robots are fighting him, it says, Batman's jaw shatters like glass. Cold Steel lances him an artery burst, a mortal wound. As Batman feels a final coldness fill him like he's about to die, Spawn uses his powers to basically revive him, as you can see there. And they kind of, when he does that, he looks into his mind and he realizes, they get to see their basic views, and they're like, "Oh, I understand that we have to, help each other out," and they're going after this lady. So then they work together. You get this really cool double spread, which I really think is nice. Definitely Todd McFarlane's a good work from him. And they go after this girl. Basically, she has him like his hypnotic power, and she's going to meet the president to try to get him to give her power, I guess. So they board the boat and they destroy that. I feel like the ending was a little bit rushed because you don't get a lot of any sort of bad thing. Like there's no real bad guy in the sense. I mean, yeah, she's bad, but it's not like bad in the sense of like the other one had a demon. He was the one they fought at the end, and they both fight him. That was cool. This girl, she just was trying to get more money and power, and basically they blow up the ship, and part of the ship falls on her, as you see right there. It pierces her, and then she activates a nuclear missile to strike New York, and then Spawn puts him on top of the missile, and Batman, of course, disarms it because he's the best. The missile falls anywhere, and he transports him back. And then he says, "We'll meet again." And then this part is really funny. I think the ending of this is great. Right here at the bottom, it says, "What do you say we just bury the hatchet?" And then Batman says, "Bury this." He throws a batarang, and bop, bop. And then, of course, you got some of the pinups here. This is Greg Capullo's work right here, which is really cool. And then, of course, you have Todd McFarlane's work right here. So there you go. So you get some really good artists on this, as well as a pretty cool story of these two vigilantes that you wouldn't think would cross over, but they do work well together. And I really enjoyed it just because I love crossovers just because it's this improbable act of these two heroes meeting and working together or against each other, as we saw where they fight. But it's a fun little story, it's only 2 stories. This is the first time it was collected in 30 years or 3 decades. So it's cool to see that come back. If you haven't read it, I would definitely say get it. And then you can just have it on your shelf. It's a cool collection to have just because it's Spawn and Batman. And the story itself is pretty good. And then the front cover here is Capullo and McFarlane, so that's really cool. So I would recommend it. If you guys haven't read it, then you just saw the stories. You can get Organic Price Books, and I will see you guys in the next one.